you definitely learn better by doing. Um,
Totally.
so
No, it was funny because like I saw David's videos and it was just like very long and hard to digest. And then I saw your video and it was just like, okay, I'll just fucking do it. Like I'm not gonna wait until I fully understand it. And I let me share my screen.
yeah, I mean, to me, that's the best way to learn. I didn't fully understand when I was deploying my strategies, and like I said back then, when Raindex first started, you had to develop every strategy using the Mac native application. So it was a lot of questions related to the code, a lot of trial and error. And then sometimes, even if it did deploy, it didn't do exactly what you wanted. So you had to remove the order and ask some more questions just to make sure you were achieving what you wanted to achieve. And the team is great. They answer all your questions. They want to make sure everyone's learning, and they know what they're doing, right? Because this is a novel application. I really haven't seen anything like this even on other chains. So it's pretty interesting.
I know they made
Yeah,
two
both.
breakthrough apps.
Go
Man,
ahead, Steve.
I was
Go ahead.
gonna
Go
say
ahead.
they made. I mean, those that group is way underrated. They made two breakthrough apps. Like, I mean, there's nothing like the Cyclo Finance anywhere. And then you
Right.
got one here, which is like you said, completely. I mean, what they build out of the box stuff. I mean, it's crazy.
Oh yeah.
All right. So can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
All
Fast
right.
exit.
So I'm on the double side S flare, wrap flare. And then what fast exit?
Yeah. So this, I believe it exit a position at a higher rate than if you were to not, right? So the minute it builds up, your a certain level of profit, it allows you to exit that. So you're getting the most out of each trade, essentially.
But what does exit mean? Does it mean that it just stops the strategy or it just like pushes the whole amount until like it
Yeah,
does
so
like the
it
largest trade it can with the parameters set?
yes, yeah, exactly. So the most that it can get out of each auction period, that's what the fast exit is. So as soon as it hits that threshold, it'll take that profit and queue up for the next auction period.
Okay. All right. So then 129.03. So 1.2903. And then do you have to be doing this every flare drop? Like would you need to update this every month?
I don't. I've gone several flare drops at a time to where I didn't necessarily update my strategy, and then it is still fired off. Now I may get less in return, but I ultimately was still beating the market. Now things can change, especially because of how the initial ratios. The more the ratio goes up, then obviously the less and less profitable certain your strategies can be if you don't update them. So I definitely would recommend updating them from time to time, but from my perspective, I didn't really update mine as frequently as I probably should.
Okay. So next rate multiplier.
Yeah. So this essentially asks for 1% more for the next auction, and then it sets that as the baseline. So and then it keeps asking for that percentage more until it gets fulfilled. And then of course it'll reset if that's never fulfilled. So that's also part of the reason why making sure your initial ratio is solid as well.
So do you think that the initial ratio should be in this case the price of like the official price on Scepter?
So yeah, I typically use Scepter as my guide when I'm setting my initial price, just so I can make sure I stay in line with wherever the feed is coming from. And then I normally do the 1% just to kind of keep it not necessarily, I keep it modest essentially. And
Okay.
then I go from there.
Yeah, this is the part that I'm like so overwhelmed with. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, this is one that I would probably ask the question about in the chat, uh, because for cost basis, I really Man, I don't know. I never saw this one on the one-sided one. So I don't know. Personally, I'd probably keep it modest and keep it at that 0.2% total right there
This
and
one.
just play with that. Yeah, sometimes you just have to like click away and play with it. And if it doesn't work, go back to the drawing board.
Correct. Yeah, I guess I would need to. So one of the feedbacks that I have for Rainlang is that there's no way to see all of these options once you deploy the strategy, and that makes it hard to go back and adjust because then you have no way to see what options you chose.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Could you go back a screen real quick? I wanted to see
Yeah.
what that said. Okay. So I don't know if you know what this is, but the halving. So basically, the halving period deducts or cuts what you're asking for in half every so often. So if you choose an hour, it'll cut the auction or the baseline in half and then reset. So I normally do 2 hours just so it gives my strategy time enough to execute and build up to that 1% before the halving happens.
Okay. So I'm putting 1,000 S flare and a little bit over 500 wrap flare. So I'll do 500 just to have like more than one operation available.
Okay.
Minimum amount, let's do 100. I'm gonna do 1,000, and then here let's do 500. So yeah, this
Yeah,
this this page I would love to see it in the my strategies.
I agree. I agree. Because like you said, when you're doing like trial and error and you don't necessarily know if the strategy is going to perform how you expect it to, it would be nice to definitely see what you selected so you can make more proper adjustments. Because
Correct.
this currently is the only time you can see all of your inputs and then edit them before you deploy. Um, that probably is a question. I wonder if they don't. Well, no, I guess you couldn't edit, but you should at least still be able to see it. But I was going to say it'd be nice if you could have a strategy deployed and then just edit that strategy instead of having to redeploy another one. But they probably deploy like smart contracts, so therefore once it's deployed, you can't really edit it. Um, but I do wonder if that's what the reason is. So
I
just
wonder
me
if,
thinking out loud.
I wonder if that's
Yeah, I think you're right. I think once it's the smart contract is deployed, you cannot change it. But I think that having this information, it would be super easy to close the strategy and then just deploy one and adjust the parameters. Yeah.
what's
Yeah,
that share
yeah.
the strategies down there. I mean, can you not just share the strategy yourself and then you'd actually have the page?
That's a good question. I wonder, I think that is more of like a social media scare type of thing. I don't know. We can play with that though. Let's play
Yeah, I
with that.
mean, sure. In theory, you could just like screenshot this page and then have it for future reference. But we're, I mean,
For UI
this
purposes.
is a whole automation protocol. So
Right.
then having to do a manual screenshot and then have to refer back to that one and make sure that it's the same one, it just seems counterintuitive. Okay, so the price right now for what's Dex Screener? The price of Esflare is a little bit higher than the official price, so this might actually activate pretty soon. So yeah, 129.74 compared to 129.03.
Yeah. That definitely should kick
Right. So
off.
it already activated
Already
one.
did.
There
Yeah.
you go.
So yeah, it
See,
moved
and I
100.
love and this is part of the reason why, and I didn't even know they had a double-sided or dynamic strategy for S flare, rat flare. So now I have to go in and launch me a strategy. So I'll definitely do that right after this. But this is the beauty of having the dynamic one, right? So regardless of the direction of the market, it'll always activate based off of your parameters, right? So um, as a trader, as someone who, well, you don't even necessarily have to be a trader, but if you want to take advantage of, both sides of the market, and not really care about basically completely taking your hands off of the strategy and just letting it do its thing. This is probably the way to go. So this is pretty cool to watch real time.
Yeah, so he already did another
Trade. Yep.
trade.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's awesome.
So I after I watched your video a few weeks ago, I
Hmm.
opened yeah, so a double-sided USDC Rappler. And then, yeah, for example, here talking about information, you have the input tokens and the output tokens, and it's showing exactly the same information. So I feel like this is just putting numbers in a screen that doesn't do anything. Like, I
Yeah,
get what
have
you're
you?
saying about knowing that it's a double-sided, but like just repeating all this information twice is kind of weird.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think they could clean this up a bit, but at the same time, I totally understand explicitly stating input and output tokens because it's a double-sided strategy, right? So the tokens involved in the strategy can be on both sides, right? So if or if Flare is going up and you want to sell Flare for USDC, then Rat Flare can be an input token, as you know, in that instance, and then the output token would be your USDC. And then if you wanted to buy Rat Flare because Rat Flare is decreasing, well, and you want to buy Flare with USDC. Well, then USDC would be the output token, and then Rat Flare would be the input token. So I kind of understand, but from a UI perspective, just being clean, I guess there might be a better way of representing that.
So I wonder, for example, if I deposit on let's do 50, submit.
Yeah, you'll see that 50 increase on both sides.
Yeah, that was my question. If it would only increase on the output or if it would do
No,
both.
no, it'll increase on both sides because again, Rat Flare can be both an input and an output. And because both are pulling from the same vault, it'll have to reflect the balance of that vault on both sides.
Right. Okay. And then, for example, this one, same thing we were saying. I don't remember exactly what were my settings, but if I see here, it's around 0.0203. So what I understand in this strategy is that if the price shoots up, I'm going to be fully converted into USDC, and then this this strategy is not going to be active or efficient anymore because if we go to 3 cents, then these parameters would not work anymore, right?
Right, right, right. Therefore, you would have to deploy another strategy with adjusted parameters to capture the market swing if Rat Flare continues to well, you'd be converted completely into US or Rat Flare if the price of Rat Flare decreases. You'd be completely converted into USDC if
Price
Rat Flare went
increases.
up. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
So
it's a very interesting because in a way it kind of works like LPs, but it's a very different dynamic. Like it's a completely different process.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's exactly what you're doing is it's think of this as an LP. Whereas if you were to do a single-sided strategy, you're almost just DCAing based off of your parameters, right? So you would be using USDC to buy Rat Flare as Rat Flare, the price of Rat Flare decreased, right? So that would be the only direction that the strategy would be able to execute. Whereas this, like you said, it's acting just like an LP, so it's fluctuating as the market swings in whichever direction.
Yeah. It would be nice to be able to set that whenever the ratio between USDC and Rappler changes over 2%, you start trading and it doesn't matter about this ratio. It's more about the ratio between this and this. I don't know if that
Yeah.
would be possible, but that would like something that you could like set up and that it's always trading back and forth regardless of what the price is doing. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, so and that actually was one of my ideas early on, like I said, when you didn't have this beautiful interface to quickly deploy a strategy, you had to code everything. And my idea was to pull prices based on the FTSO within, I think I was doing like at the time, we didn't have fast updates or anything like that on the FTSO. So it was updating every 3 minutes. So my strategy was trying to fire off every 3 minutes. And based off of the FTSO quote for a given asset, I wanted to trade the difference in percentage compared to the last time the FTSO price was pulled. And it works for a little bit, but when you get super high swings or super low swings in the market, it struggled to capture that. So I definitely agree with you. It would be nice to base it off of the market activity versus just the parameters that you yourself set. Almost like more of a percentage wise thing versus the hard coding numbers.
Yeah, like this ratio could be something dynamic that kind of, like, let's say that flare goes up 10% for whatever reason, it just goes 10%, and then this ratio kind of settles, and then whenever yeah, it goes back down 4%, then it buys again, and then it kind of keeps trading. I don't know,
Right,
maybe that
right.
could get out of control very quickly, but it would be interesting.
I mean, you never know. You never know. Because my thing was setting a baseline percentage. So say the FTSO pull prices and the price of Rat Flare was 3 cents, right? And then say the very next time the FTSO price or the FTSO gave a quote, the price of Rat Flare was 5 cents. Crazy. That's a crazy swing in a matter of 3 minutes, right? But my baseline percentage would be like 2%. So I think that's way more than 2%. So I would want my strategy to execute regardless because the baseline threshold was exceeded, right? So and every time that baseline threshold was exceeded percentage wise, I would want that strategy to continue to trade until say it hit like 10%. And if the price swing hit 10%, then I would want my strategy to stop or something like that. You can play around with that, but yeah, things can get a little complicated doing it that way.
Okay, so then I guess my last question would be, how do I know what's the result of all these trades? Like I said, I put a double side, I think above 2.03, it's selling Rappler, and then below this price, it's buying Rappler. So
Hmm.
it's been going back and forth. I mean, it's been a good range right now that it's been like up and So how do I know what's the result of all this? Like once I cash out, I have no
Like
idea.
as far as how well the strategy did, or
Yeah, because for
yeah,
example, I don't have the graph that you have on your app.
right, right, right. And again, that would be nice if they could embed that into the web application because I feel like more people would use this versus the native application simply because the web interface it just removes the complexity, right? So what I typically do is I calculate my earnings. So if you scroll up there to the top. So your output there, oh, I'm sorry, scroll to the top of your little graph there where all your trades are. So your output was 238 rat flare, right? And for that 238 rat flare, you got 4.7 USDC, right? So what I would do is I would essentially calculate the percentage delta of each of those between maybe 4 or 5 trades. Now I know that's a manual process, and that definitely gets complicated for certain people. But to me, that's just how I would do it. Like when I would do single sided, if I wanted to get a certain percentage, like if I wanted to see if I was hitting 5%, I would see how much rat flare went out and how much S flare I received, right? And then what I would do is I would take that number and go to Scepter and see how much that same amount of rat flare would get me an S flare, right? And then based off of that, I would calculate the delta between how much my Raindex strategy in S flare got me versus how much S flare I would have gotten if I just manually went through Scepter. And then based off that percentage, then I can say, okay, I beat the market by 2% or 3% or whatever. And then over time, you can kind of see how often you're hitting that 4% or 5%, because then that becomes your average, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, for example, for me, how I would understand input tokens, this should be the starting point, and this shouldn't change ever. And this is what the results. And I think that would make it super easy to calculate, because if this was
Oh, okay.
30 and 200, and right now I had 30, 14 and 206, then I know that I made 14 cents plus 6 Rappler.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So what you're saying is in there should be a place where you see what your initial deposit was.
Correct.
Okay. And then there should be another place where it increments or decrements based off of what you started with. Therefore, you can calculate, okay, I've either lost X amount of Rat Flare or USDC, or I gained X amount of Rat Flare or USDC. Am I following?
Yeah, totally. So
Okay.
because that's what I mean. It's like I don't understand why there's a need to repeat this information. If it's the same information, then input and output doesn't make any sense. Like if this is a reflection of this,
Yeah.
then it's just having doubled information. I don't know. So then can you lose money on this? Like wouldn't by the parameters that we chose earlier only activate when I mean, I guess here would like this strategy would be like I sell all my Rat Flare into USDC, and then yeah, Flare goes 50% up, and then I miss out on this Flare that I sold, and I just, in the same way that you would do with the LP.
Right, right. Yeah. A dynamic strategy definitely, from my understanding, it introduces that impermanent loss, right? So the same risks are introduced here like they would be in an LP. So is there potential to lose money? Yes. I would say that.
Okay, but no, but what I'm saying is, do you think that this Rainlang or Raindex could do not like loss trades, like trade at a loss? Because yeah, impermanent loss, that's a different story. I understand impermanent loss, but it's a different thing that they're like selling at a loss. Like for whatever reason, this trade back and forth that now I have 25 and 150.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it all depends on your parameters. So if you set your parameters up, I would I'd say it's hard to say wrong, but if you definitely set your parameters up in a way, in certain ways, then yeah, you could indeed lose money. You could trade at a loss for sure. So that's why for me, it was important for me to like really drill the team and make sure I understand certain things. And also learn by doing, you know. So if I'm selling at a loss, or if I'm triggering losing trades, then to me it's like, you know, okay, scrap this strategy because it's not working. And let's restart and adjust the parameters. But that's also why the chart on the Mac native app was so helpful, because I could see the degradation of, you know, each trade. So if I'm seeing that yes, I'm profiting, but I'm profiting less and less each trade, I'm okay with that, because then that means I'm still within my parameters. If if I'm trading, but I'm trading at a loss all the time, then to me that's a terrible strategy, and you probably need to remove that strategy, so you're not losing.